Welcome to Parenting Special Needs Live. I'm Shantae, and today we are also joined by Michelle Giannetti. And today we're going to be talking about key things parents should know about psychoeducational evaluations. And we have our special guest, Bethany Scholl-Lavery. And we cannot thank her enough for coming in and joining us because we wanted to get some information that, kind of the what, whens, whys, and what to do with the information from psychoeducational evaluations. So please welcome Bethany.
Hey.
So Bethany, can you start us off with kind of like telling us like,
101.
The 101.
And I will speak to how things are in Ohio where I practice. Just a side note that things can be different in terms of timelines from state to state. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
But, once a student is on an IEP in Ohio, they get reevaluated once every 3 years. Now, so that is the standard. But as a parent, you can request an evaluation to be done earlier, than the 3 years if they see fit. In terms of getting on an IEP, that is done either through the school sees something or the parents request it. And then the school, can either accept the request or deny and give reasons as to why. But that's basically it for that.
Well, why would a parent request it? They see that their child's like not progressing the way they should. Like, would parents request it? I don't think that why would I request it?
There are so many different reasons, and as to that, some are just through another medical professional suggesting that maybe the parents go forth. It could be the pediatrician, could be a psychiatrist. Some start in preschool that, or help me grow, from the very, very, very get-go. So, and then there's others that just parents with working with their kids at home, just feel that something's off.
So then what should you expect to get when you get the, what are we looking for when we do a psychoeducational evaluation for parents?
Overall, yeah, the major points are general intelligence, or all it's commonly referred to as an IQ, academic achievement assessments, and that can be standardized assessments or just classroom-based assessments that the teacher has done through progress monitoring. Social emotional, how they're doing regarding their feelings and everything. And sometimes adaptive behavior, just how they function, within their world. So those are and also an observation of them within the classroom setting. So you or I, with my own eyes, can see them interacting in the classroom with other peers. Sometimes I peek in on lunch, kind of see what they're doing there. Like if there's a social, piece of it, of a concern. So that's about it.
So I have to ask because, when my daughter received her evaluation, she was probably about 7 or 8, her first one. And I have to be honest, it was awful. I was gut punched. It was tears. And basically I took the information and basically hid it in a binder and never looked at it again because it was like soul crushing. Now, perhaps someone didn't explain it to me or tell me what I needed to pull. I don't know. So is there ways that somebody doesn't have to do what I did that could make sure hey, you're going to get this information. But how do we use it? No one ever told me how I should use it. In fact, a key point on that is I didn't learn until years later from doing, parenting special needs and the magazine and stuff that they actually have instructions in there about how a child learns best. No one ever pointed that out to me. So anyways, that's kind of what I want to make sure, and maybe not every school does that.
Yeah, It's hard to explain just kind of sometimes what I do with my own gut. But I always keep in mind that yes, this is a kid on my caseload and I have 50 some of them to get through, by a certain point in time. But to you or the parents, that's their world. That that I can't see them as just someone I need to check off a list, like that I really need to put on my parent hat and just think, about how I would want to receive the information. Regarding, your concern, there is a place on the forms now to put what this means. And I'm a person that I don't read the report verbatim in the meeting. I kind of globally talk about it. I'll pick it apart as, we feel necessary, but focus on what's this mean? What do these numbers mean? And unfortunately, to get appropriate services, sometimes we need those numbers in there. However, they're not the end all be all. And you just to explain that to the parent as well.
Well, I will share. So Bethany is a school psychiatrist at the local school here. And so that is a little background for her. And she was actually the one that did Elizabeth's ETR, her final ETR. And as we're...
Wait. What's an ETR? Because that doesn't... I don't know what that is.
Oh.
We don't have it in my... I don't know what an ETR...
I'm a school psychologist. I was going to...
Did I say psychiatrist?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I meant to say that.
So,
okay, so...
what's an ETR?
Evaluation Team Report.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Which is a requirement. And Elizabeth was in her senior year. And of course, you're realizing you're at the end, you've done it all you think you have, and you get the test. But Bethany was very kind, so kind to call me up and to say, Michelle, hey, you know what, why don't you come into my office and let's go over these so that your first time seeing the numbers or seeing the report isn't going to be in front of a room full of people, which was great. It was so nice to have that. That was the first time that was ever done. And I think it's something that if anybody wants to know exists as a possibility to help them, that's also something that parents can ask. Hey, can I see them in that 5-minute window before, just to have your emotions, and you're only having them in front of one person, So I thanked you before and after for all that.
My pleasure working with her and with you. I just think, like I said, those scores aren't an end all be all, and to get services, unfortunately, that realm, of post-secondary stuff, whatever the transition is, like they require those scores. And I usually just kind of try to globally, talk about things as much as I can. But I felt that walking into a room of professionals is just intimidating. And I'm intimidated sometimes, I'm not going to lie, so just to try to ease that a little bit for the parent is something that I always try to do.
So go ahead, Michelle.
If you were a parent of a younger person, a little younger student, and you had the first one done, how do you recommend them asking for clarification? What's your advice? How do you do that at the meeting before? How would you help them to take from it the best they can?
Well, one of my children received an evaluation at the preschool level, so I got to sit on the other side of the table. But if for some reason the conversation cannot be had before, I always say at the beginning, I'm going to go through a lot of information. Stop me if I'm getting too, crazy in my talking, and you don't understand what I'm saying. But I also offer them a time, because they might not feel comfortable asking questions in front of a room full of people. I always give, my contact information, which usually by the time that the report or we're at the meeting, I had talked to the parents numerous times. But I give them my information so they can go home, think about it, marinate it, and then come back and give me a call and go through sometimes almost the entire report all over again, but this time, just with them knowing what's coming a little bit more, so they can listen a little bit more.
Yeah. And I want to ask on that too, because I just want to ask, like, maybe if we could help parents shift it. Like, I know I was saying with myself, and maybe I'm a unique case where we didn't have a specific diagnosis for Kaylee at the time. So we were looking for something to help, some kind of answer, some kind of something. But then when I received that, score, it just kind of blew up my world. But if we were to shift it and someone was to say now, why, like, if we shift it to help parents think, like, looking for certain aspects of this evaluation that are going to help educate the child, like, rather than me looking at it as from a parent and I'm devastated because I'm hearing this, know that we're going to need information that's going to be helpful.
Right. And I think one of the scariest components of the evaluation process is the IQ, because people just know, they hear that word, they know the weight it can carry, and it's important to realize that there are so many different types of intelligence out there, and the one that we give within the school setting is the predictor of academic achievement, not necessarily in life. There are some components like working memory, processing speed, that you need to know, and that's good information. Like when you ask the question, it takes longer to hear what you're saying, think about what they're and then get it out. That's important for future employer to know, future teachers information.
So that's kind of leads into the next question, is when you're looking at test results, and you and I've had this conversation, and when what people see in the list and what people see in the student doesn't match per se with the test numbers, are how can you help them fully represent the child? And I think that's an important thing, because numbers alone, when seen, may send your mind one way about the child, and learning others things, helps. So that's what we were asking about too, was we can take things from it. And like, we did something for my daughter and our daughter together, which was to provide like anecdotal information from those who know her, work with her, treat her, about what they see, to give a better overall picture, which is something that maybe, I did not know was an option, and I had guidance on that, and you were receptive to that, which was helpful as well.
Yeah.
So what else?
The key player, I know when we did Liz, we just asked for an anecdotal from key players, not just in the school, but some of her therapists outside of the school as well. And I know when we did her adaptive behavior, which is like daily living skills, rather than put numbers, I talked more globally about that information, what it means, what she should be able to do, where she might need some support with, and worded it more that way, as opposed to just a chart with a whole bunch of numbers and below average, or whatever next to that. So
the other thing,
I think that's really key. So that would have been super helpful. I could see, like, right. So is that something parents can kind of ask for? Because I can see, like, I'm going back to myself. I took the score and was devastated. But had someone said, like, hey, that's only a number. I mean, no one really sat down. They just kind of like, I don't know, just presented it and let me go on my own. You know what I mean? So and my husband, he was there. We were both devastated. But Like, is it something like, hey, this, like, how do parents look at this? It's a score. It doesn't show the overall everything. And then you're going to provide, you help provide the anecdotal story, or is that what parents should ask for? Like, hey, can you, like, how should we ask it to be explained? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I know, in my case with working with Michelle, she was the one that had asked me, but I was all for it because what the evaluation team emphasis report should be is information from all the key players in a student's life. And if you're receiving services outside of school, you can ask the psychologist, to incorporate some of that, or they may have something that they want that person to fill out, like a rating scale or just something to get information that way from outside therapists. But yeah, I mean, it's just tough because, like I said earlier, sometimes those scores do have to be in there, and I usually try to put them at the end, so they're there for whoever needs to see them, because I don't want them not to get services
right.
outside. But some of them really, do look at those numbers. Unfortunately,
No, but I think that's like a key point. Like, I think that could have been extremely helpful to parents if it was kind of in a way like, and I don't know this to be the case. You'll have to let me know. But like, okay, so you're getting the evaluation, but then maybe you do ask all of the key players to not only do the test and give the score, but do a little anecdotal thing so people can understand what that might mean, because that might have been more helpful to me than to just have the score and felt like I had nothing. Like, they kind of made me feel like my daughter would be sitting in a corner doing nothing the rest of her life. And that, and I had to take that and go, I don't agree with you, so I'm out of here. But if somebody could have said, like, hey, here's the score, however, we see that blah 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 blah, and I don't know, is that something that like people could ask for?
Absolutely.
But they don't know. I mean, that's what we're trying to do this show, so they know to ask for this stuff.
Right. There's all those scores represent something, and not just the tiniest little thing. You can ask, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? Or what does this look like in the classroom? Or what will this look like at home? Or what should I see? What can I do to help? Those are key questions that are 100% you're right, as a parent to ask. And sometimes the psychologist can give you answers. Maybe sometimes if it's a little more, whatever they might say, can you stay after? Can I call you later? To have that further discussion. But it's important information, and it's important for, unfortunately, the teachers in the meeting get that information, which is why I try to get we call our special education teachers in Ohio are called intervention specialists, to get them to put a blurb in their individualized education plan or their IEP, as key pieces, not, this is their IQ, but maybe just talk again globally about it and what it means in the classroom. What can you do as a teacher? Because every teacher that the child will be working with will receive a copy of the IEP. And so that I make them kind of bold, or italicized or something, so it sticks out to the teacher.
So in other words, taking the scores and somehow making them just applicable to day-to-day life at school, life at home. So it's like taking the scores and then making them applicable to like day-to-day life in the classroom, what to expect. And I think that's kind of helpful because they're just numbers, but when they help get put into words and help get put into things we understand, that can be really great for the parents to request. So there's a couple things they can request is to put in like anecdotal stuff from their private therapist or the people that work with their child and bring that to the school, as well as ask for anecdotal from people at the school who worked as well. Right. And then ask for the applicable words to help. So that's good. And there was one other thing we did on her final one was instead of having the test scores on her eval, we put the words test scores available upon request, so that the anecdotal stood out and the narratives stood out as opposed to the numbers.
Right.
Okay, so
And that was
share with me the anecdotal portion. Like, just you don't have to paint the whole picture, but paint me the picture, because you guys are saying it. You two are both aware of what you did, but me as a viewer and as wanting to help other families, what does that mean? Like,
so what I did is I approached at the time of the last testing for Elizabeth. She was getting private tutoring, private speech. She was working, volunteer working at a job. So what I did is I asked all of them if they could tell in a letter form what they see in Elizabeth, what she does, how she listens, how she follows through, demeanor,
her weaknesses.
exactly, like what a typical experience with her was, so that yes, you could see that she needed cues, because they would say, well, we have to help her with this, or we have to remind her. Well, okay, that statement there, we have to remind her, could literally be what you'd see in a classroom. Elizabeth needs that prompting, so it would actually probably be on par with what they would say in the testing. Mm-hmm. But it would also be someone saying, in addition, she can do this, this, and this. And I got the letters from everybody, and I gave them to Bethany and asked that they be put into, and just in their form, in her record.
Okay, so I understand, like, that's also you coming at it when your daughter is older, because she's now in high school and you are an experienced.
But I would have done it earlier had I known.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. You didn't know. So as a young mom, like, exactly. All right, Bethany, you were saying one of your children had to have it done. So, but if you don't even know to ask that, you wouldn't like. So now you're experienced because you're a psychologist. So you're, but for all those other moms, what would they ask? Like, they would ask, hey, can you just kind of tell
strengths and weaknesses?
Can you share the strengths and weaknesses in a little letter to us about Charlie, so that I can give these to the psychologist to help her with a evaluation?
Yes. And that's, try to keep it as simple, in layman's terms. Anyone can look and find strengths and, talk about weaknesses too, but you are, usually dealing with professionals that they'll be able to write up an observation of just what they see is that they do well, what they see that they need to work on, just very tips.
Right. So is that something you as a school psychologist typically ask the parent for? Or is that something like I'm saying it's standard procedure, but I'm saying maybe we as parents trying to help other parents say, ask them and deliver it to you, because that would be helpful, right? With you doing your evaluation.
Right.
I would think, right, to have some other people that are working with the kids day in and day out. Because for me, for example, back with my child, at that time, she did not speak very well. So if you weren't familiar with her, she could be telling you a lot of things and you have no clue what she's saying. You know what I mean? Like if you're just coming in and seeing her on Tuesday and then again on Friday for your evaluation time, or next, you know what I mean? Like you would have not known some of those things. So is that something we should recommend parents? Like, hey, ask for strengths and weaknesses prior to help assist the psychologist with the evaluation. Is that?
And usually it goes hand in hand with what I see, within my setting, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's a little different, but I always say that my setting, working with the kiddo, is a utopian world, and that we're one-to-one, we're in a quiet room, minimal distractions, just so I can talk about how they learn, and how they interact and how they function in that type of setting. But to ask others, for strengths and weaknesses and what they see. I mean, the way, your daughter would interact with just a female in a room may be different than a male gym teacher in gym class.
Right.
So it just helps create and paint a bigger picture.
I love that. All right. So, anything we didn't ask that we should have asked? Or that you can advise parents? Or
Yeah, I would just say, if you have a question, don't be afraid to ask. Pick up the phone, shoot us an email. We're there to help. And sometimes, unfortunately, some psychologists, like I said, get caught up in the busy times of years, and you can't fault them for that. But it can help, just reaching out may help them check themselves, take a step backwards, like, okay, and have those conversations. Um, like I said, you never know until you ask.
right.
So everyone, does things a little differently regarding the psychologists. But if you want something, or if you want to look at something, ask.
And I want to ask you, just, is it standard procedure in the evaluations that, and it might be different in schools, but in typical situations, or across them, is it typical to have how your child learns best? Like, I know that in the ones that I've had, like, I know it now, like I had mentioned, where the report is in the back, but it's all the way in the back of, it's like one of the last pages. I didn't even know it existed. You know what I mean? So not until she was like a senior. So second grade to a senior, it could have been helpful to me, at least sharing with other teachers. But is that something like that they do put in there, like how this child might benefit from XYZ? And
The forms were changed a handful of years ago in Ohio, and at the bottom of every single page, there's a box that we have to fill out. It says educational needs, and then there's a second one that says implications for instruction. So in Ohio, again, I can speak that, those are the forms that the state provides for us, makes us
right.
give that information. Sometimes it might not be the best and clearest, which is why more, prompting more questions may be warranted. But it's in there. So you just need to know where to look.
Right. But that also brings up a point, everybody that's watching, is that it's not a level playing field. Every city, county, everything's different. So what they might be doing might not be the same as in Florida, as in Georgia, so, but we're telling you all of this to kind of like make sure, if it's not on yours, perhaps ask, right? To see if you can.
Exactly. Where the rubber meets the road is, it's your world that you're working, trying to help. And ask the questions. If you don't see it there, ask, what on earth does this mean?
Yeah.
Completely.
How did you come to my house and read mine and explain to me? Because now I'm still learning about her.
Yeah, it's a kosher question. And like you said, might not be on all the forms in all the states. So especially if you don't see it in there, ask.
Right. And ask. And not to be afraid of the numbers. I guess I'll say that now after all these years. Not let it like crush your soul, and realize that it's just a picture at that time.
Snapshot.
It's a snapshot of the child at that time. And that doesn't mean that there's other skills that maybe can't be measured. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Like there's so many different theories and types of intelligence. And like I said, the IQ assessments that we give in the school look at academic skills. So, and it ties, with the academic achievement. It doesn't talk about, like we were saying before we began with Liz, like it doesn't talk about their art ability and their abilities, to do all this other stuff. Like the purpose of it is school based, so it does look at the school, but keep in mind that it's a snapshot of that day and that, that time in that moment with that much food in their belly and that current medication. It could be fluctuate, based upon that.
Right. No, I love that. Well, that's what we want people to hear. So, well, I can't thank you enough. So I love all the things. And it's basically ask questions. If you're not clear on anything, ask. So I want to just recap, and Michelle, you can correct me, or both of you, to recap a little bit, is to, one, if you're not clear of something, ask questions. Also to ask for the strengths and weaknesses in advance, right? To kind of like help see the bigger picture and more clarification of your child. But to not let it just be the be all end all, right? I mean, to know that your child is more than a number and that there's lots of things that they're capable of to
Absolutely
push forward. So, well, I can't thank you enough, Bethany. Anything, Michelle, anything I didn't cover? You guys, anything that we need to?
No, I think you said it well. I said I think the biggest goal is that we want everybody to understand who our children are fully. They're not a number. They have so many other facets. So with the proper asking and talking and communication, you can paint the picture of who they are. And that's what you want people to know.
Right. And not be afraid to ask. I think probably at the time everything was so new to me. And I'm talking about when she was little, like, you were talking about, Liz, you were talking about you had more experience of dealing with all this. But if you're brand new to it, to education and everything, and you're overwhelmed like me, I didn't even know what was wrong with her.
Right.
It's scary. I didn't even know I could ask questions. I thought, it's kind of like the doctor hands you the results, you think you're done, I mean, so this is why we're sharing with you all, to make sure that and to help. So thank you, Bethany, again for being with us. Michelle, thank you for sharing as well.
Yes, welcome.
We're going to sign off now, and we will link the article below about psychoeducational evaluations and how they can benefit your child and questions to ask. But we will see you next week. And in case no one has told you today, you are doing a great job. Be good to you, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.